Welcome to ICF Insights. I'm Tony Marchese. Well, today I have the privilege of sitting down with the president of the West Virginia Board of Education, Mike Green. And really happy that you're able to be here with me this morning.
Well, thank you very much, Tony. Delighted to be here.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
We've talked about doing this for a while, and one of the things that I was hoping that we might be able to talk about, Mike, is a little bit about kind of what the function of the State Board of Education is, what it looks like.
Sure.
What your role is as the newly re-elected president of the board.
Right.
I'd like to talk about some key issues that I know are really important to you. I know that you really are a strong proponent of technology, and I know you have quite a bit of a background in that area. And so I was hoping we could talk about that, and then, you know, there's a lot going on right now in West Virginia.
Right.
And I hope that we could carve out some time to talk a little bit about a couple of issues facing the state right now as well. So that's kind of what I was wanting to do, but I'd like to give you a chance just to talk briefly about your background, maybe what brought you to this place.
Good luck brought me to West Virginia. I think that's probably the way I look at it. When I tell my life story to people, they're very, very surprised. Here I am, a young kid from the Bronx, New York. Went to college in Boston, and then after that spent a little time in the military, and then worked for the National Security Agency for 10 years. And my background is primarily mathematics. I was a crypt analyst for the National Security Agency for 10 years.
What is that, Mike? I saw that on your bio, and I was so intrigued.
Crypt analysts are people who break codes.
Okay.
So foreign governments, when they send their information from place to place, they encode them with cryptology. Huh. And the job of the National Security Agency is to do just that, is break the codes and know what our enemies are talking about. And the other side of the coin is the National Security Agency is also involved in protecting our communications. So it's a two-pronged program there at NSA. So I was there for 10 years as a mathematician, and in the last 5 years I got more involved in technology programming and became a software developer and became one of the early pioneers in the development of software for computer networking. Way back when, in the 70s, the 1970s, that is, just in case anybody's wondering how old I really am. And from that particular point, I then entered into the private sector, and from there spent many years as a sales manager, marketing manager, and many executive roles in some major technology companies. So technology is very, very important to me, and certainly apply that to what's necessary here in West Virginia for our children.
I look forward to kind of exploring some of that with you. What got you interested in education?
At the time, Joe Manchin approached me several times, and he asked if I would be interested in serving on the state school board. My first reaction was, seriously, Governor, at the time, Governor Manchin, I don't come from the education world. He said, I know that. What I'm interested in is two things. One, your background in technology, and also your background in business. And he felt at that point in time we need to balance out the school board and bring people in with those types of qualifications who can complement some of the education things that were going on here in West Virginia at the time.
You know, I know a little bit about the function of a state board of education, and it's incredible how much is involved with that, not only in terms of a skill set I think that's important to have in order to be able to function effectively, but also just the amount of work, and there's always things happening.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is probably, not probably, I'm going to retract that and say the hardest job I've ever had.
Is it?
Because there's so many things that need to be done. We are tasked with providing for education for our children, the next generation of the people who are going to run our great state. And we take that very seriously. My view of that is education fits perfectly into the world that I live in today, which not only is complementary to education, but I'm very much involved with entrepreneurship, early stage investments in businesses, because I feel very strongly we need to be educating our children for the jobs of the future. So complementing my interest in business and technology and education, it all ties together. And this is a public service job. I've been very fortunate in my life, Tony, to be in a position where I can give back. And this is important to me, and I'd like to continue to do that as best I possibly can.
That's really great. Tell me a little bit about the function of the board. You know, in terms of structure, there's the State Board of Education,
Mm-hmm.
there's a state education agency, of course there's districts, and then there's schools.
Right.
One of the things that I'm really interested in is how the the State Board of Education works or intersects with the state Department of Education.
Sure. Okay. People do get confused from time to time between the difference between the West Virginia Department of Education and the West Virginia Board of Education. The West Virginia Board of Education is primarily focusing on the policies that need to be implemented by our education system. The West Virginia Board of Education is made up of 9 members, each serving a 9-year term. Okay, and the West Virginia Department of Education is run by a state school superintendent who is selected by the state school board. The state school board, on the other hand, are people that are appointed by the governor, and for that 9-year term. But our primary function is to make sure that policies are created that are appropriate and needed for the constitutional responsibility we have for providing for an efficient education system for the children of West Virginia.
Would you consider your board diverse in terms of the type of people that are on the board in terms of experience and backgrounds?
I would. I mean, I think that's one of the things that the governors have tried to do to make sure that it is diverse. The board of the West Virginia Board of Education must be made up of members from all 3 congressional districts and balanced on a political perspective. In other words, it can't be all Democrats or Republicans. Sure. It has to be equally split.
When you think about the Board of Education, what do you think are some essential qualities for a person to be an effective board member?
I think having a good, strong, good common sense is probably the thing that I would say is most important, because many of us who don't come from the education space really have to take into consideration how complicated and how complex some of these issues are. And it took me, I would admit this to be very true, probably about 2 or 3 years before I really assimilated all the education speak that goes on in the education world. It takes time to understand that. So if you're going to be an effective board member, especially from the beginning, it's probably really important that you have good views and good common sense that says, I can understand what these issues are, but equally important, be challenging enough to make sure that you understand the issues before you're really required to vote on particularly important issues. So I think good listening skills and the ability to really comprehend complex issues is very important.
The one thing that I find interesting, is that the Board of Education does have some former educators present, but there are also people that have never necessarily served within a K-12, for example, environment.
Sure.
So when I think about the board being responsible for the creation of policy, how do they necessarily possess the capacity to do that, particularly for those, I mean, like yourself, Mike, when
Right.
you did not come from a traditional
Right.
K-12 background professionally. How did you learn?
Well, I think I just have enough skills that I've learned over the years as to how to break down complex issues and ask intelligent questions. It's not that complicated. At the end of the day, it's important for you to really understand what the issue is and to sort through the major maybe issues that perhaps are a little controversial.
Sure.
And be able to provide good insight into that and make hard decisions. I think people with business skills are quite capable of providing great insight into Board of Educations.
Well, you're certainly a stakeholder, and you have an investment in that,
Yeah, I do. My primary, I guess, views of this is really our job as educators is to, yes, make our children smarter, but primarily our real responsibility is getting them career and college ready and really ready for their role in the world. And what that really breaks down to is the ability for us to provide them the basic education so they can get jobs, good paying jobs. For those of us here in West Virginia, what's equally important is that our children get these good jobs, that they stay here in West Virginia, that they raise their families here in West Virginia. And as we all know, we lose too much population, and a lot of our great young people are leaving because there are not enough jobs. That's why I focus so much on education and early stage and entrepreneurship, because they're just inextricably linked, and it's important for us to provide education for that purpose.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, you have that, you're able to see the kind of the full perspective on that, the relationship of a quality education to a fulfilling career and
Yeah.
adding back to the state, adding value.
I try to. It's very complicated. There's not enough venture capital, as we say in the
Sure.
state, and not enough capital to be invested into our businesses. And that's a challenge as well that I'm trying to work on.